Looking at ROI, range of interpretation, we have one interpretation, which one interpretation would be it is real, it's like reality. And then infinite over here, it would be like, for example, you've got text where it's very open to interpretation, and there's still limitations, but it's very open. Cartoon style is still arguably not reality because there's a few different interpretations of cartoon style. One of them is that this is their world. So you could even look at like rougher graphics like this, bless you. And you could say, hey, this is how they all look in their world. They all look like they got these blocky, chippered faces. And that might be the interpretation. But it could also be that, hey, this is basically a representation, bless you, of reality. And we are supposed to interpret reality from this. But it's generally easier to create content over here than it is to create it over here. Let's say that you want to create a rough description of a fantasy event. A giant dragon swoops in and takes out the party. If you say that as a description, then you're a terrible DM, and also, you can imagine it. Let's say that you're moving from there and you want to actually make a drawing of it. Even if you want to make a very rough drawing, it's going to take longer for you to make the drawing than it would for you to give that explanation. A lot of people, they kind of view the sweet spot, the cool place to be, as being over here, and it's a different spot, but it's not a better spot. So some of it is about scope, some of it is people kind of wanting to move that way. I would look at that and I would go, okay, so how do you want people to kind of see the world in your story, in your game? If you want them to see it as bright and happy, and you're setting this in an area that would naturally look a lot darker and not as happy, essentially move a bit away from realism in order to show your ideal reality. And in general, I mean, you know, most game styles today, even when they say that they're going for realism, they don't. They go for something that's more abstract, or to an extent, not totally, but just something that is, like maybe that the colors are brighter than they would be in general in a setting. What is it that you want to be interpreted by the audience? And if you want it to be focused on a certain aspect of reality, you're generally moving a bit away from reality, and so that's kind of where you'd be falling into this. Like if you're trying to make a comfy, like farming simulator, and you have chickens that are trying to scratch your eyes out, you're gonna mess with the tone a bit. So you want to keep that in mind. You want to keep in mind how you want the game to feel. And yes, that means the chickens are going to be unrealistic, but what's your goal for the project? Like, what are you trying to present and give to the audience? And taking it from that perspective is important. One of the benefits of being in this area over here, like for example, text, is that you can imagine the characters as you want to. Let's say that you have an actor in a movie. Not everybody's going to relate with the way that the actor does their acting. Even if they're a good actor, not everybody's going to relate to the character. If you have things more open to interpretation, then people can actually take that, personalize it into what would hit the emotion for them. More open, it can equal, I'm not going to say it always does, but it can equal more relatable to more people. You might even tell them like, this thing is fun, this thing is sad, this thing is happy. And when you do that in a text form, then people can go, here's what I imagine is fun, here's what I imagine is happy, and they slap that into the story and they put that on the character. So for example, let's say that you can't do good cutscenes. If you have pretty good writing, then people can interpret it as being much bigger than it is. I wouldn't say that it's a intrinsically good or bad thing, but it's a powerful thing that you can use really well. If you can relate with people in books who have no physical form, who you can't see their faces, you have no visual to go on, there might not even be cover art of this character or a picture of the character on the book anywhere, it might be completely in your imagination. If you can do that with that, then surely if you move along this scale, and rather than being at the place of like realism 1, you're like over here, surely if this is relatable, then this can also be relatable. Like, this can be relatable for sure, of course. Like, this can be. Like, I'm not saying that one interpretation that having it be realistic is bad, but, you know, you're able to have your mind be open to something's even a little bit easier when it is open. Like, if I tell you in a book that something is scary, you'll believe it's scary. But if I tell you in a game that something is scary and you look at it and you think that's not scary, then you're going to trust the visual over what I tell you about the visual. You're going to trust what's actually there over what I tell you is actually there. Now, if I remove that visual, then you would believe me when I tell you it's scary. But since I've shown it to you and you disagree with my emotional assessment, like, there's a disconnect there. And that's going to hurt more than it's going to help. If I didn't tell you that it was scary and then you're like, that's not scary, it might be fine. But if there is a strength to having things be more open, absolutely. If your goal is, hey, I want to make this as impactful as possible, and you cannot do well in this area over here, then it's probably better to stay over here for now and learn and build your way up. People are, I'm hoping, losing this mindset a little bit. Your story got made into a movie, wow, it's achieved. Like, it used to be a book. And maybe it used to be a comic, and that's even worse. Or it was a video game. Now it's a movie. Oh my goodness, that's so cool, it's a movie. Well, a movie isn't better or worse than any other medium. It's just another medium. Live action film is not the epitome of human creativity or of human media. It's not. It is one form of communication. It is one medium. Just like video games are one medium, comics are one medium, books are one medium, visual novels are one medium, music is one medium, abstract paintings are one medium, audiobooks are one medium. They're all different media. And so you can actually specifically go, okay, I'm going to have some senses be more open to interpretation and others be more closed. You can apply range of interpretation to any senses, but when it comes to interpreting how different media work, they're basically looking at, hey, here's range of interpretation between 1 and infinite, and I can take this medium and I can put the senses all along. Like this would be a silent movie, basically. And then if you end up looking at a video game, let's save it for Ocarina of Time, or a visual be, well, maybe visual would be like around here, audio right here, I don't even know. I'm sorry if these icons are terrible. Sense of smell, but you can still, you actually have a bit of closeness of interpretation. Like if you look at this store, we can see, that's a terrible nose, but you can see that we have all of this wood everywhere. And that tells us that it's going to smell a lot like wood. Like maybe we'll have like a sap smell. It's gonna, like, there's gonna be a smell to it. There's also going to be a physical feeling to the area. Like you can look at physical items, and it's not always through description or through it existing that you gather that information. It can actually be gathering information about one sense from your experience in another sense. So like I can see this game world, and then I can imagine how it could smell, how it could like feel. Now, most people aren't necessarily thinking about that unless it's given to them. Generally, we will take senses that are more closed to interpretation, and we will first consider those. We will first think about those over senses that are more open to interpretation. So most people, they aren't even going to consider smell and physical feeling when playing video games, for the simple reason that it's not given to them and it's probably not mentioned to them that much. So you're generally going to think about the senses that are most close to interpretation. Passage of time in this game is actually not there. It might not even be there because you have like days passing by really quickly, unless days just happen quickly in Hyrule, so it might be more like over here. But passage of time is somewhat close to interpretation. You could open it up a little bit more. But yeah, that's some of how story forms theories works. That's some of range of interpretation. You end up seeing, hey, how open do I want interpretation to be? And then you can basically set your senses along different points in the scale, and this depends on your resources and all that. You can determine ROI for individual senses. One of the things that you can also do with this, and this makes it way easier to communicate about different media, is that you can end up applying different terms to these different sections on the scale. So we say that if you have one potential interpretation, and by we, I developed these theories, so I guess I say it, but I like to say we because I feel more special when I say we say that there is one potential interpretation that is determined. So we have determined over here. When you are as far as you can possibly be, which is basically it's completely in your imagination, we call that imagine. So for example, if we were watching a live movie, interpretation of time, that would be 1. There's one potential interpretation for time, therefore we have determined time. We rarely would apply imagine to things. Where I would apply it in cases is like if we talk about abstract paintings, random splotches and stuff. Like that is a medium of storytelling, but it's extremely open to interpretation. That's how it works. And so you're expected to take the little that they give you and do a lot with it. Described interpretation means that you have a wide range of interpretations, but you still have things closed off a bit. So this would be like books. You have some information, but it's still widely open. You've also got represented, which is arguably where cartoons fall. Because you could say that in cartoons, they are a representation of reality. One of the big powers of not hanging out always in determined is that when it comes to represented, you can really hone in on detail. Cartoons can be great for action because you're removing a bunch of extra detail that just kind of clutters up the screen. More close senses are prioritized. And so what you can look at is that you can look at how do I help people focus on what I actually want them to focus on in the story rather than like seeing something random over here. And I think that's something that's going to be a problem with media in the future, is that if people just keep trying to go for more realistic, then they're going to miss out on that kind of aspect of focus that right now we have as a limitation, but we can use it as a strength. And as we get into media that are close to reality, like VR, and as we try to incorporate smell and other things, which is happening, people are doing that, which I knew it would, and I think it's cool, even if it's probably going to be used terribly for a long time. Yeah, it's helpful to consider what are the strengths and weaknesses of what we're doing, and not just doing it because it's close to reality or it's cool or whatever. It is cool, and I like that there are people pushing it, but what are you doing with range of interpretation? What are your goals with it? What are you trying to get across? It's all about communication, and range of interpretation is critical for that. And range of interpretation is really, it's how communication works at a fundamental level, and helps with determining are you communicating effectively. So that's an area where I could probably go on and on about, but I think that it's a good place to